Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us in our session today. Again, you're with us on our Facebook Live or FC Live sessions, and today we're doing another episode of what we like calling conversations. For those of you who are not familiar, perhaps if you're tuning into us in this platform for the first time, then my name is Paulo. I am your facilitator, your coach, and perhaps just your learning partner for these sessions. And later on, I will ask my partner, Lippy, or Frederick Lipio, to introduce himself. Today, we have a special guest, and we'll introduce you to him a little bit after Lippy introduces himself. For those of you who are not familiar, Conversations is a different format from what we normally do in our more conventional Facebook Live sessions. What makes it different is that we have a team, our production team behind the scenes, whom you don't see, who quite literally almost pull out questions, experiences, challenges from a bag of goodies and then share them with us. So whatever you see on the screens, you're seeing them for the first time, unless perhaps you're the one who submitted them, and we're seeing them for the first time as well. So we're taking that journey with you. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to my partner in crime, so to speak, Frederick Lipio. So Lippy, take it away.
Thanks, Pao. Hi, everyone. For those tuning in for the first time, I'm Lippy. I'm a certified facilitator with Franklin Covey Philippines and Center for Leadership and Change Incorporated. I'm also a professional certified coach with the ICF. And again, as Pao says, we're here not to lecture. We're not here to advise. We're really here to be together with all of you guys and be your learning partner here, sharing experiences and asking questions as well. I do invite you guys to share your thoughts, share any questions in chat about the questions and concerns and the topics that we'll be talking about. And if you have any question that you want answered, please feel free to put it into chat. If you do have a concern that you want a deeper exploration and you want to have a conversation with me and Pao, you're very welcome to give us a message to tell us that you'd want to be on the show. Okay? and without further ado, so we do have a special guest today, right? And we've invited this person to be on the show to share their expertise and their experiences and really have a conversation about learning and about all these different topics that will be coming up today. So Pao, just share with us some details about our guest.
Well, for those of you who've been with us in previous Conversations episodes, his name will be pretty familiar. Lippy and I like calling the little nuggets and insights he drops in our chat window or our chat forum, golden nuggets, wisdom bombs. We have also all sorts of nicknames for the different things he shares. But just to give you a little bit of background on where he is and how we know him. So this person worked with us at the Center for Leadership and Change some 25 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when it really all started. So while we are dating ourselves, perhaps, and I hope that our guest will not mind, I guess wisdom does come with a little bit of age, as they say. So he worked with us at the Center for Leadership and Change. He since then has remained a very strong advocate for for 7 Habits and also for principle-centered leadership. Since then, he has moved on to further develop, I guess, what I'd call his professional toolkit. So he's since gone into being a strengths-based leader. He's also a manager and a coach. And he's currently affiliated with and works with First Gen Corporation. There he leads the Professional Learning Solutions division. I don't know if I'm calling that correctly, at First School. In order to share a little bit more about him with you on the personal side, I'll turn you back over to Lippy.
Yeah, when I got to know this person, yeah, that's right. I mean, even in a regular conversation, right? Just talking to this person, there were so many wisdom bombs being dropped, and it was what I appreciate most about being with our guest and interacting with our guest today. It's not just the depth of experience and insight that he brings. For me, it was more about the authenticity of him just being himself, right? While sharing all of these experiences and tools that has worked for him and other people and that has helped him make an impact. And I share this because, I've also had the privilege of being a facilitator to one of his daughters in a teen program that we run. We run the Seven Habits camp, and I was one of her facilitators as well. And she was such an outstanding participant there, and we've maintained a relationship. I've been in touch since then, and I've also gotten to interact and on a small project work with his wife. And they all speak highly of this man, idol. This man is my idol. I can only hope, and master, teach me your ways is where I'm coming from. And I really am so excited to have him here in our conversations today. So without further ado, Pao and everyone, let's welcome our guest for today, Mr. Sidney Cordero.
Woo!
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, Pao. Hi, Lippy.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I felt although mistakenly mentioned, special gift. So I felt that. So thank you so much for the nice introduction. One of the things that wasn't mentioned, but I wanted to declare here, I guess, was, one of my dreams joining CLCI, and after CLCI was to be able to run a full 7 Habits program. so I guess living it is a better substitute than just running the program. Also, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks. I mean, guys,
Sidney.
listen to that, right? In the workshop, we teach that actually living the 7 habits can be more challenging than just teaching and experiencing it. And this man right here, Sidney, just tells us that, it's about living the 7 habits and rather than just teaching it. So this guy walks his talk. And I'm curious, Sidney, we'll start with this question, right? What got you into Franklin Covey, CLCI, and the 7 habits right at the start? Because I'm aware you joined the organization when it was just taking root and growing here in the Philippines. What got you into that in the beginning?
Thank you for that question. Okay, so it's really about being able to run the program itself. So I wish someday I'm going to run this program. So in 1996, I actually joined the workshop run by Kaloy Bulaton, the master facilitator and master trainer. And it's so inspiring. I was just so inspired by it. And so I told myself, one day I'm going to run this program myself. Until now, it's still a dream. I never really got to run the full program, but I guess I was able. Our facilitator Karen allowed me to run habit 2 and 3.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
So I kind of that was very meaningful for me. I hope that
Nice.
answers the question.
Yes.
Thanks. So,
Thank you.
Pa, we really should find a way to help this man achieve his dream of
Yeah.
facilitating a 7 habits workshop.
I think so. Actually, earlier, Lippy, you were sharing something about having run a workshop for some of Sydney's own direct reports, right? And I think you mentioned how some of them had very, how do I call it, good words to share about.
Yes. In a nutshell, short story of it, because there are many details to this story. There are really a lot of good words said about how Sidney, our guest today, is living out and practicing what we teach and what he has found useful and learned in the 7 Habits workshop. How did I know this? I asked one of the participants, asked them, and usually I check in with my participants with how are we doing with the learning, how's the pacing, because it can be quite a lot of content, right?
Yeah.
And then she, the person tells me, no, I'm doing good with the content. It's not the first time that I've heard some of this, and we experience it frequently with our boss. And that was for me, that was a compliment and a big Sidney, you should be hearing this. And I did tell him that, like, after a few months when we saw each other.
So looks like you're doing a good job of the living part, Sidney.
Woo! So shout out to those with us. We have Raymond, we have Marge, we have City.
Sidney.
Thank you for joining us.
And we have Sidney's own daughter.
Yes, hi Nina.
I have a supportive family.
Yeah. and you know, and Pao, this was also coming to me as a surprise, right? Sidney knows of you from before. Today, yes, before being a facilitator. What was that anecdote you shared, Sidney, if you don't mind me asking?
Should I be logging off now?
In CLCI, one of the things that I think got me so connected, and I felt like I'm really part of the organization, is the love for family. And during that time, Nena and Agnes would always talk about their sons who are in the top of their class. So even before I met Paolo and Rafa and Agnes's sons, I know about them already. So parang their profile is so vivid in my mind. So when I learned that Paolo, for example, was in Coca-Cola export, I wasn't surprised. Because Coca-Cola export only gets the top guys, right? Yeah. So I wasn't so surprised at all.
Thank you, Sidney. So no need to hide, at least. No need for me to hide.
And there we also have a message from Kuchi. Hello, classmate.
Hi, Kuchi. Yes, my classmate.
And Sid, before we dive into the questions, I'm curious, right? If you would share with us and to everyone joining us and to you maybe watching this recording, right? And what kind of impact has it had on your work and personal life, knowing and practicing the 7 habits?
That's an interesting question.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for that question. And go in my first 2 years of work, that was tough. From college going to work and having to get out of poverty, that was really tough. It kind of challenged my mental health, and so I was lost during that time, and I was also coming from a huge breakup during that time. So when I joined Covey and got and learned about the workshop, and I joined the workshop, it was the turnaround of my life, because I learned how to be able to master my own life. So so to me, habits 1, 2, and 3 were very powerful, because I was able to control a life that is going nowhere. Kaya very close sa akin yung first things first, what matters most. They until now, I still have my book, and I keep looking at it. My mission statement is still quite consistent. They change in words, but my values and my mission is quite consistent. So I think from a personal and professional perspective, it changed a lot. It transformed me to become a better person. But from an organizational perspective, the habits 4, 5, 6, and 7, especially 4, 5, and 6, really mattered, because it depends how you looked at it at the first try. At the first try, it's like interpersonal. It builds interpersonal capability. But then again, as you grow and as your issues become, wider and deeper, like me as a manager and as a leader of an organization, I realized there's so much to do about co-creation. I mean, co-missioning, co-creating, and collaborating, which is not just being done within families. It's also being done with teams, with organizations, and with society. So right now, for example, the issues on COVID, on persons with disabilities, on traffic, no, I use Covey. No, I use the habits 4, 5, and 6 to co-create and to collaborate with society or with the leaders of society and those who are affected. So to me, it has helped me transform lives. No, kasi I'm trying to help people in poverty, unemployment, and help the manufacturing industry with operations, no, in Batangas. So right now, to me, that was very helpful. Even be e- even now and even before, no, many years ago, especially when I started my managerial career, it really helped from that perspective.
Nice, thank you. And
Thank you for sharing that.
I just want to share, Sidney, for those of you who might not be familiar with it, habits 4, 5, and 6 talk about what we call the public victory, being able to
Right.
build strong interpersonal relationships, with other people, with teams. That's think win-win, seek to understand first, then to be understood, and then to build synergy within. And so thank you, Sidney, for that.
Oh, that's
Fantastic
very
example,
yung
yeah.
building synergy
Mm.
is so important kasi a lot of times we try to build around conflicts, but we
Right.
forget that to be able to create value, especially for the people who cannot help themselves, we need to synergize with the people who we think we don't like, no.
Right.
So and think win-win is very important, no. Thinking win-win and listening, including collaborating, synergizing.
And I'm a bit curious. You say what does that look like? No, just to spell it out for everyone. What does that look like when you're building around conflict? Because some people might be in it, but maybe me, I don't recognize that I am in it. So would you share with us what do you mean by building around conflict versus building around synergy?
Okay. Kasi when we sit down with different people, they come with different perspectives and with different interests. So, for example, when we sit down with the traffic management office, the local government, and companies, including us, no. So, the government just wants to make sure that they abide by their promise of clearing the highway, for example, and making sure that it's safe for everybody. But then here you have the manufacturing firm saying, "Hey, can you give us some leeway because we really have to stop the buses, the shuttle services along the highway. Even if you think it's an obstruction, we have to stop because we promised our people that we're going to get them and bring them safely to work and back to their houses." So there are different interests that come to play, and there will be a lot of them. But how do you marry that? Those are the conflicts that we need to help people understand. And it's hard to make them to make it synergize until people really listen. Kaya the dialogue is very important, and that they start being concerned about giving people also an opportunity to be able to serve their own interests as well. No, so yeah, kaya the third alternative is really is really important, but you have to do the thinking, win-win, listening, and synergizing. But synergy is a lot of important things like what is our purpose? No, what are we trying to create here? No, I mean, what do we want to achieve at the end of the day? So how is that going to look like? And how are we going to build a system that will make it sustainable? Yun, ang hirap nun. Pero it's but that's synergy. that's basically what synergy is about. No? So habits 4, 5, and 6 are very important in building societies and creating value for, especially for the people who cannot help themselves.
Agree. And we teach in the workshops that to get synergy we have to persist. We don't and it's so easy to just give up in the face of all of these conflicting interests and just let things run or let and not fight for what is important or your win or not actually go for a third alternative. So we do share that, and that's what I'm getting also. What Sidney the story you're sharing tells me that we've got to persist to working towards something, an alternative that would be beneficial to everyone.
Oh, pero alam mo, Lippy, the key sometimes is in the conversation itself. Kasi more often, I don't know if you know about the drama triangle, no? Kasi more often than not, the conflict space there are bullies, no? There are villains, and there are heroes, no? So ay kawawa naman ako. Kaya hindi, you're wrong, I'm right, di ba? When you have those conversations, it's not gonna go anywhere, right? You have to change the conversation. You have to, yun yung, kaya tinuturo yan sa 7 Habits sa Think Win-Win.
Love it. The drama triangle.
Yeah.
If I may highlight something, I like what Sidney mentioned about, I like what you said, Sidney, about giving people an opportunity to serve their own interests as well. And I think that's something that is often lost because, and I think I've done this myself. Sometimes we present the bigger picture or the greater good, and we say this is for the greater good without realizing that we're pushing our own opinion because we probably honestly feel it's for the greater good, without realizing that sometimes we're actually not serving or we're not benefiting the very people we're talking to, and we don't realize it. It makes it even harder for them to accept it because then we're saying yung interests mo, they simply don't serve the greater good, so sorry ka na lang. And I think that pointing that out is important because very often in society nowadays, like for example, we're taught all sorts of things, be a man for others, etc. And yes, those are great. I certainly believe in them. But when we force people to let go of their own interests time and time again, and as you put it, especially the people who can't fend for themselves, and what happens to them? And how do you do win-win if that's all you do?
Right. Yeah, you are also important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Sidney. I think that's a very important point, and I think it's something that's often lost nowadays.
Yeah.
All right.
So, Lippy, what do you think? Shall we move to the...
let's. So Sidney, we have not seen these questions. Our production team has curated these, the theme of the day and these questions as well.
Sure.
And let's see what comes up. All right.
You allow.
Okay. So usually we get situations here which are also really nice. So here's the situation. Here's what's coming out. So you allow others to win so that they may realize that winning for both is faster, but it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Wala daw yung realization. Wala yung realization na pinagbigyan na nga kita para pagbigyan mo rin ako para pareho natin makuha gusto natin. Or feeling pa nila wala kang ambag dun sa achievement.
Okay. There's quite a bit of emotion, I think, behind this, no? What do you think? How do we approach this? Shall we hear from our...
if I was coaching this person, I would be immediately curious about how clear is what he's thinking is supposed to be clear. But let's go to Sid. What do you think about this situation?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. No. There are two entities trying to make an agreement, diba? And you're trying to create something of value. So I go back to what I mentioned a while ago. Are you also important? And that's something that you also need to put in the conversation or on the table, saying what is important here. What is important? Because And it doesn't have to be you or me. What is the important thing, what is the value we're trying to create together?
Mm-hmm.
And can we pursue this? Because if not, then why talk about it, right? So but I know the reality of what this statement is saying, because it's more often than not, it's happening. Unfortunately, more it's you catch yourself on the losing end, and you teach people to abuse you, and that's not the right way of doing it, because if it happened before, then maybe we can do it again, and because for you it's a reinforced behavior. I did it before, I can do it again. It's going to give me this, but we fail to see that there's a bigger value we're trying to create. Is that important enough for you to continue with the conversation, right?
Getting clear on what's the goal, what's the value, right?
Yes.
What's the wins that we're trying to create for both of us here, not just the other person. Again, going back to you are important as well.
Right. And I think I like what Sidney brought up about having clarity around what we're trying to create. Just to go back, you allow others to win so that they may realize that winning for both is faster, but it doesn't happen. And the first thing that came to mind here for me was those, and I'm pretty sure most of us have been through them. When we have these one-day team building activities and they send us off with some sort of game, paramihan ng bola inside the basket, or some variation of that. And then you eventually realize that there was no instruction that it was only one team that could win. And you sort of say, okay, let's get together and we can have more. And I think what's missing is in those controlled environments, I'll just call it a controlled environment, the rules are set up so precisely that even when the game master or the team building facilitator sets it up, they're very careful. They don't mention competition. They articulate the goal so precisely that there's that. It leads you to a certain bias, which we all know we have, which is competitive nature. But it also doesn't mention na kailangan ganon. And yet, to bring us back to what Sidney said, unfortunately in the real world, hindi ganon kalinaw. We don't have that clarity, that precision. Many of the challenges we face are, as they say nga, VUCA, very ambiguous, very fluid. And sometimes, very often I think, we create the assumed goals for ourselves and we assume that they're shared without saying, okay, let's sit down and agree, is this what we're going for? Or maybe an even more open question, what are we going for together? And so we allow others to win, yes, so that they may realize that winning for both is faster. But maybe we don't have the same definition of win. Baka iba yung hinahabol natin. And so to our minds, pinagbigyan na nga kita, bakit hindi mo kaya? And maybe you're just not seeing that we're going into different directions entirely. Feeling like pinagbigyan na natin sila. That to me is one of the things I took away from what Sidney said. Have clarity around what we're trying to create together and where we're trying to go. And I think that's important.
Yeah, and just reading this statement, it's again going back, Sid, what you're saying about, alam mo, the conversation is where it begins to happen. Because I'm reading into this, it's an assumption that maybe this person hasn't had that conversation. Put frankly, and my friends sometimes, one of my friends says this, parang, girl, ba't di mo sinabi dun sa kanya anong balak mo?
That's true.
Something it's just, like, you allow others to so that they may realize that winning for both is faster. Sometimes, and you can't make this stuff up. Sometimes you just gotta tell them that, hey, this is the plan, this is what I'm gonna do. And if we did this together, we might just get, sometimes it's just helping people and just being clear about, this is my intention, this is what I wanna do.
Right.
And if you don't do your part, okay, fine, but this is what's gonna happen. Sometimes even having that courageous conversation.
Yeah.
Kasi dito wala yung realization. So galit ka. Galit ka na hindi yan na-realize, hindi mo naman sinabi sa kanya ano ba dapat ginagawa niya. Diba? It's like telling someone what do you want to eat. And then Pao, diba, telling me kahit ano. And then I'll give you whatever food and then you go, but hindi mo alam na hindi ko to gusto. Oh my God, please. The drama triangle.
Yeah, okay. At the back of my head, ano ba naman itong si Lippy? Bakit naman ganito yung pagkain?
Di ba yan na-realize? na Yeah, right? So it's about,
right.
For me, that's what this is saying. Yeah.
Sydney, it looks
Yeah.
like there's
Kaya
something you want to add. It looks like there's something there.
Yeah. Thank you. Alam mo kaya na it's so important yung tool sa Seven Habits, yung Dr. Grack, no? Design.
Ano yun? Ano yun? Paki-explain for our viewers.
It's called win-win agreement, no? So you have your desired result, that's doctor. You have your guidelines, and then you have resources, accountability, and consequences. No, if the result is good, there's a consequence. If the result is bad, there's a consequence also. But it's very important that when you go into that conversation, it's clear what's your desired result. What are you trying to create?
Yeah.
And then how are we going to do this? Because there has to be agreement and there has to be clarity of the way, way we want to do this. Are we going to be flexible or are you going to be stern on the steps? No, are you going to give me the resources? Or if not, then you know that there will be consequences, right? Kaya napakahalaga ng that you're clear about that. No?
Yeah.
Accountability. Are we going to report monthly, weekly? Who's going to be accountable for this? Who's being responsible for this one? And then what is the consequences for poor performance or good performance? Because that plan creates clarity about are you going to help me or not? No, because if not, then this is going to happen. No, don't let don't let luck do its thing. You have to have a plan, and that's what So for example, boss, no, you allow your boss to win so that you'll probably be you'll be fine. But you see, a great boss would like to look at your plan and would like to support you. That's a good boss. Yeah, if the boss says no, you have to. I don't care what your plan is. Do it. That's a bad boss. Leave.
Unequivocal.
Yeah, it doesn't get any simpler than that. Leave, and that is supported by studies. People don't leave companies or jobs. The first biggest factor is they leave bad bosses.
Yeah.
That's right. Grabe yun, no? That again, just speaking to the truth of it, no? And let's see what our next topic is.
Sorry, if I may add just one more thing, if
Okay.
you don't mind, Lippy, before we
Go
jump
ahead.
in. I like how Sidney mentioned Dr. Grapp. I also think there's merit in looking at, again, going to the 7 habits, what we call the win-win agreement. And I think the reality is very often we do that exercise of coming up with the win-win agreement, but we do it in our heads. We sort of answer for the other person. It's sort of, ito siguro, maganda to, gagawin ko to para kay Sidney, without asking Sidney, is this what you want? Or would you appreciate this? And to your point, Lippy, of yun nga, yung manlilibre ka, mag-order ka ng pagkain, sometimes, what we assume is a deposit or is a favor even, just doesn't happen to be a favor for the next person. Like for example, I'll just cite the example of my son. Very often what they say is let the children learn for themselves. Let them do for themselves. And sometimes they'll be very clear about expressing that. Like I'll tell my son, here, I'll do it for you. And he will outright just say, no, me, I'll do it for myself. And, sometimes the parents feel like, no, I'll do it for you. But the child actually wants to do it for themselves. So much so that if I insist, magwawala siya. And, that's a true win-win agreement takes that into account. What is a win for the other person and what's the win for me? From them, not from my head, not assuming for myself. I just wanted to add that.
No, that's a really great point because it goes back to having that conversation.
Agree, yes.
Right? And not assuming na siguro ito yung gusto niya, di ba? Then,
Or
sabi nga nila, maraming namamatay sa maling akala.
Yeah.
To paraphrase that quote.
Yeah. Or Sidney directed our attention kanina to bosses. And sometimes, even I have done this at times. When we're the boss, sometimes we assume na alam natin lahat. So dapat ito yung gusto mo. Without even siguro ito. It's a prescription already na ito dapat yung gustuhin mo. Which I think is even worse, di ba? Sorry, Sidney, I interrupted you.
I like that you mentioned the personal, no? Kasi it's so important. And sometimes we look at giving deposits from our own perspective, nga,
Yes.
no? So it's good to learn the languages of love, di ba?
Agree.
Because
Yes.
sometimes what are the languages of love? Giving gifts, service, words, touch, time.
Time.
No, so sometimes we give something, and then we realize, why is it not reciprocating, or why is he not responding well? And that's because you didn't study that person very well. You didn't listen to his own language of love. No, so kaya napakahalaga also to give uh, the way he wants to be loved.
Agree. Agree.
Yeah. What's your language of love, Sidney?
Naku.
No, ako words and gifts.
And gifts. So you like receiving tokens and ano.
Yeah, gifts and touch pa rin. Yun.
Yan. So for Sydney's family who's listening, paki-note na lang.
Oo nga.
Okay. Sige, okay, let's move on to the next one.
Sige.
Yeah, let's see what the next topic is as our team dips into our grab bag. Okay, maganda to. Kasi next question, if a person is uncomfortable with feedback, how do you give one?
That's interesting. That's an interesting scenario.
Uncomfortable with feedback, how do you give one? I can imagine, kasi sometimes I'm guilty of this, even more often before than now. It's something that people have to unlearn, or people are yung tipong you're given the feedback and then the reaction is that of a victim, or you're bullied ka na parang, sige na nga, tama ka na nga, okay na yun. Tipong ganun. Not really accepting of it.
I think, let me try, no? Let me try.
Go. Yes, please.
I think it all goes back to what are you trying to achieve? No? So what's your desired result? Kasi feedback is a way to achieve something. No, you probably want to develop something. You want to develop an analysis skill. You would want to change the perspective. But there are other ways. No, there are other ways of doing feedback. So let's not be technical about it. But it's true that some people really can't take feedback. It makes the relationship even worse. No, how? This is where managing difficult conversations need to happen. No, why do they feel bad? One, you're making them feel incompetent. Second, you make them feel like they disrespected. You're disrespecting them, or you don't like them, no? Third, which is more intimate, is you don't love them. They don't feel that you don't love them. Then the conversation becomes more emotional, right? So the key now to do is to tell a story. To tell a story about what's really happening, rather than what you're feeling. Stories, diba? What you're feeling.
How would that sound like? Yeah, give us an example, Sid. Parang how would that be?
What you're feeling is like, alam mo, this one, you made me feel bad. I got upset with this one because you gave me something that I don't like. So that person now feels like, oh my gosh, you did something wrong, right? But if the conversation is about, I got this report. It says here this one. No? The template says you have to do this one, but the information here says it's this one. But what do you think? This is the correct information, or what do you think is the right information for this one? So you're picking it into something factual, no, something more objective, and you're not saying you are wrong. You're saying this is wrong. No, this is wrong. So now he can have an opportunity to correct it objectively. no?
Right.
Rather than you telling him, hey, you're bad, no? Now, the other part is there are really some people, like in the French language, maximizers. So regardless of how you say it, they're going to say, they're going to think, oh, I wasn't good enough,
Mm.
no?
Mhm.
That one, there's not much you can do about it, no? You just have to tone it down. You have to tone down the the feedback by doing it another way. Like for example, what we are a family of maximizers, by the way. No, so
Wow.
my wife, my daughter, my two daughters are maximizers. So the way I give feedback to everybody is by saying, "What do you think of this?" Yeah. Uh, um, which would you prefer, this one or this one? So, and they get it, and I'm not taking it personally. No, but and then they're going to get hurt because they know how I do things. But they know I'm trying to respect them. No, I'm trying to respect their feelings. I'm not making it like uh I'm trying to attack them. Now, and this is where the EBA or the emotional bank account matters. You need to have high deposits in the emotional bank account for me to be able to do that to them. So I can just kid around and say, hey, you know what? I prefer this one over this one. What do you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't attack or I don't say, you know what you did was wrong. Oh my gosh, that's going to be an emotional conversation.
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes here.
So am I. I honestly am taking notes here.
And share. Pao is such a better note taker than me. Pao, if you would share. No, for those of you who might not be aware, okay, there's an assessment that measures natural talents. Maximizer meaning it's natural for a person to go for the best, okay, and not accept mediocrity. That's what Sid is
and try to
explaining
get the
to us.
best out of.
Yeah, which could also mean that a person's worth and confidence can be tied to the performance because a person pours heart and soul into what they're doing.
That's true.
Right? And that's what Sidney is sharing with us here.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, actually, to that point, Lippy, I took quite a few notes on what Sid shared there. And I won't go through everything because it's going to take longer even than what Sidney took, if you know me. But
Yes, I know
So
you.
I think one of the first things that I think was very important that Sidney mentioned is, again, going back to the desired objective or the desired outcome. And I think not even the big outcome necessarily, but I think one of the things that might be important is to declare that intent at the very beginning, whatever route you choose to take, whether it's telling a story, giving feedback according to some formula and we do know there are different formulas for feedback nowadays, but I think one of the most important parts is starting with that. For example, if it's a formal conversation, then have a formal conversation and say the point of this conversation or the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is, for example, if it's about improving performance, or if I like what Sidney said about giving the person an opportunity. If it's perhaps I'd like to give you an opportunity to make this even better. So at least it makes it clear. As Sidney pointed out, it's likely that the person will get hurt to varying degrees depending on our natures. But if that clarity of intent is there from the get-go, I think it makes it easier to transcend the pain rather than wallow in the pain and go into that cycle of just going back to the things that Sidney said. Go into that whirlwind of I feel incompetent or I feel that I'm not good enough. Because without that intent, there's no direction to it.
Yeah.
All you do is you feel the weight coming in.
We share, right? We share in the program that communication is like an iceberg. The skills and the words are the 10% you see above water. The intent is the 90% that's keeping the whole thing afloat.
Yeah.
This is why when I initially saw this question, that was also where I was thinking about what's the intent, what's the goal, what's the purpose, rather than the technique. Because you could have all the technique in the world, but not have a helpful or supporting intention towards the person, and it'll still fall flat. So for those who ascribe by it, okay, I'm sorry, but I don't practice the sandwich method that much because it has not worked for me. My mentor says, and the feeling is, himas sampal himas, and that's not a good pattern to have with people, di ba? For me, and I found that sticking to the facts And going back to Dr. Grack, right? The accountability and the consequences of what the person did gives a person a chance to fix it objectively and not think of not internalize that it's the person that's wrong. It's what the person did is wrong.
Right.
And in a way, we have to educate people about the difference. More so here in the Philippines where we speak to a lot of people, and I've even had participants tell me, as a culture, we pinipersonal natin yung mga bagay.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it's talking about the performance. Yes, part of that is due to technique. Meaning, I am admitting a lot of the managers and leaders, and Sid, you can tell me if this is true, right? Are not necessarily trained in this, right? Giving feedback according to the impact and facts. Because sometimes, right, I used to also come from a manufacturing line. Naku, I once had a conversation with one of my managers because the manager would always tell people, bulok ka, bakit ganyan performance mo? What? But the person's But the person's giving his best out there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, just again go back, keep the intention and stick to the facts, because the facts would never lie for me, and that gives a person an objective way to measure improvement. Because the first question here is the feedback. The second question here is, what happens after the feedback? Diba? Because sometimes people think about just giving the feedback. What's the point of the feedback? We want them to improve. How do you know that they've improved? Right? And metrics and facts give you a much cleaner yardstick to measure whether a person has improved or not, and not just, nagawa ko or hindi ko nagawa, or it feels better or not. That's so much more difficult to call.
Yes. Go ahead, Sidney.
Yeah, what's interesting about the third alternative in thinking in synergy, is when the perspectives of the fact becomes the third story. So ibig sabihin, this is your story, this is my story, and the only way we can get to the third alternative is to have that third story. No, that's the fact. Those are the facts. No,
right.
Kasi the reason why we're in conflict is because we have different interpretations of the facts. Kaya it matters that both parties see things in the same way. Then you can create the third alternative.
Right, right.
Alam mo, Sidney, apart from what we've shared, because this is such a powerful thing you're saying, and I want to ask you, apart from what we've shared about listening and the intention, are there any tips that you can give our viewers about how to get to that third story?
Oh, yun. So, let both parties at least talk. Kaya napakalaga ng listening, empathic listening. So we teach dialogue, no? Yung that we listen to not just the words, but the feelings and the non-verbals, no? And see what's really happening. So what's really happening from his side and what's really happening from this side, no? From my side. And then let's put that together. These are the facts. These are even the feelings are facts.
Yes, that's true. Even the feelings are facts.
So if when this was done, both are mad, no? So you need to know those things. Then what are the pain points. So in the journey mapping of that whole experience, these are the pains. This is what we need to solve. That's where you need to now come up with a third alternative.
I love how you just parang you boil it down to what are the facts and what needs to be actually resolved, right?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Maria Rita is sharing here that habits 4 and 5 are requisites to reach the third story. Yeah,
That's
definitely.
True.
And Sid, I felt, gave a really great example. Diba? If everyone followed that, the telenovelas would be out of business. Kasi 3 episodes in, tapos na eh.
Pero alam mo, very powerful yung specifics na tinuro sa atin eh. Alam mo yung specifics, no? Yung when you were listening, you were going to look at what's the situation, what's the problem, what are the evidences of the problem, what are the consequences, what's the impact. So, and then given that, what do you want to do? What's the future desired result? No? So napakahalaga nun sa yung going to the third alternative. Ayun. So, di ba tinuro yan sa with mahal para siya, di ba?
Oo. And Sid, so ito, may maganda akong question dito. I'm noticing, right, and maganda kasi it seems like there's a structure to your method. Right? How do we begin to share that? Or how do I begin to apply that if I'm not as structured a thinker as you?
Kung hindi kasing systematic.
Kasi Sid has like I'm hearing Sid has a criteria when I'm listening. What's the situation? What's the emotion? And through experience, and through experience, guys, you can develop this, right? I'm not. It's a skill that is trainable, and I'm saying this coming from someone who has undertaken coach training because they teach this in certification in professional development when it comes to professional coaching. But I'm a manager. I'm in the moment. I don't have a structure or like this, and the heat gets to my head. Mainit ng ulo ko, right? Any tips that you can share, Sid, about how I can start to listen deeper, as you were saying?
Alam mo, regardless of the patterns, no. I'm a high intuitive person, so patterns is very important to me. But regardless of it, you have to be able to name it. Because if you cannot name it, then it's not important, no. So at least in any conversation, you need to know what's the problem. Because if it's not a problem, why discuss it? No, why make it a big deal? So what's the problem? And it has to be evidence based, diba? Ayun, so what? Kasi the problem is the difference between what's really happening and what do you want to do. What's that gap? No, so then we need to start telling the story, and you know what the story is, diba? There is who are the characters, what's the problem, what's the moral of the story. So at least know those things, because if you cannot name them, if you cannot name what's really happening, it's hard to solve. It's like it's a circumstance, no. It's not an important thing. So if you want to make it a problem that you want us to discuss, then name it. No, name it. And so if it's a problem, then there has to be a gap.
Yeah.
Then, right? But what are the evidences of the gaps? What's contributing to it? And then how do we solve it? Right? So basically that's it. There's no way around it.
Yeah. So there's no way around it, people. You've got to name it, right?
That's true.
To figure out.
I think one of the other things, and I like how Sidney points out the need to name the problem. And as Sidney puts it, it's the gap between what do you want to do or what you want to happen and what's really happening. Just to go back to the question that we were thrown. So, person is uncomfortable with feedback. How do you give one? I think one of the things that might also be worth naming or identifying would be, where is the discomfort coming from? Or what is the discomfort about? And maybe in relation to that, what is the relationship? Kasi I think much of what we've been discussed presupposes, let's say, a boss-subordinate relationship. But what if it's between friends, for example? Or what if it's between partners or colleagues? And then I think while the tips that Sidney gave definitely still will apply, I think the approach might be slightly different. And maybe when we're able to name, or when we allow the person to name where the discomfort is coming from, then maybe it allows us to approach the situation with a bit more, I don't know what it is, purpose, or with a bit more focus on how to address it. Actually, when the question first came up, I realized even positive feedback can be uncomfortable for some people. And they sort of just brush it off with ay, di naman, and then they just kind of walk away. Even if you're giving them
so yes, people, when we say feedback, it's not just because that, right, this is also something that is, that we've become accustomed to, maybe because of society and how, in environment. But feedback also talks about improvement. It also talks about acknowledgement and praise and how one can get better. Feedback can sound like, Sidney, Pao, you guys did a good job. And here's something, that I'd want to share with you that can help you, keep this up or level this up next time. That's also feedback.
Right. Yes, Sidney.
Yes.
Yeah. So with feedback kasi comes conflict, di ba? Kaya it matters that we need to understand, we need to be able to define what is the ideal or what are we trying to get to, no? Or what's the
Right.
value we're trying to create. And so personally, it's the relationship. First of all, does the relationship matter? Because if it doesn't, why are you spending time there?
Right, right.
So you're just creating enemies. so, uh, but see, it matters that you understand what the conflict creates,
Agree.
and there are healthy conflicts, no? Kasi you need to understand also that the conflict is putting you from a level of discomfort, from a level of comfort to a level of discomfort, but it's the ideal that you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's not normally nice, no, but you're trying to make things better. So
Yeah.
you have to remember the reason, no? And why am I doing this for, or what am I doing this for? So napakalaga ng who, and then why and what, no? Who am I doing this for? What am I doing? And why am I doing this? If they're all important, go for it. Now, so now for now, but all, I mean, not all conflicts are healthy. But kasi
Yeah.
sometimes yung conflict natin, when it's too much, it makes us freeze, it makes us escape, or it makes us fight, right? So we need to be able to respond well. So even if, for example, right now, we feel uncomfortable, sa habit 1, they teach us 4 endowments, diba?
Yeah.
Right.
Be aware about what's happening, about what's important. Why am I doing this? Who, what, and why? Am I yung creativity, yung creation. So am I using my imagination?
Yes.
To come up with solutions? How am I going to go about this one? And then conscience, is this right? No, is this right? No. And then, of course, independent will. No, just do it. No, because we have the power to do this thing. No, we have we give ourselves power to do it. Yeah.
And that's something I can attest to that Sidney practices, because it is burnt in my memory. Your daughter in the middle of camp coming up to me and my co-fasi saying, "My dad requested you to teach me about the 4 endowments." That has always been burned in my memory.
I was going to say while Sidney was going through that, I love how it almost sounds like inaral ni Sidney to just before this session. And yet we know that it's not that he studied it right before.
No, I think it's just proving the fact that we should give Sidney a shot at facilitating the whole workshop.
Yeah. And one more thing that I'd like to add, just to what Sidney mentioned about, again, going back to that value that we're trying to create. I think one of the things, while of course it's important to share that with the other person, I think it's also important to remain true to that throughout the conversation. Because, for example, if I were to imagine myself in the place of this person who's trying to give feedback, and the other person doesn't like it, so let's say it's difficult feedback, it's constructive feedback, and the other person becomes defensive. I can imagine if the conversation is sustained, I will eventually become frustrated. Maybe at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, ba't ba hindi mo matanggap? And then it might spiral down into a, just accept that you're wrong, for crying out loud. Instead of...
So then the intent there is not to give feedback, or the intent there being, I want this person's behavior to change.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm thinking, right, one intent is, and I remember that different times that I've given feedback. There are times where I've given feedback that if the person doesn't want to change and accept, part of the intention there was, it was bothering me to not even say it. So in a way, what I don't want lost here is that when we talk about creating value in the intent, be clear also about what is the value for you, for me personally, to be able to also give the feedback, because maybe it's something that doesn't sit well with me and I need to communicate that to you, right? And if you're not willing to make changes, or you're not willing to work for a third alternative, then a decision has to come from that, right? That consequence.
Raymond actually jumped in with the 4-way test, and he suggested, so from Raymond Siriaco, use the 4-way test. He said the truth, and I think it goes back to what Sidney mentioned. What are the facts? What are the objective facts? What's really happening here? With the emotions and the feelings being facts themselves, not being the facts, but they themselves are just part of the facts. Is it fair to all concerned? And I think what's important here, going back to habit 4, is just recognize both parties, not just the one person who's giving feedback. And then is it about building better goodwill and friendships? And I think Sidney also mentioned the relationship is also important here. And then finally, is it beneficial to all concerned? I mean, yun nga. Kaya babalik tayo dun sa win-win eh. Do we recognize the wins or the benefits or the desires of both parties?
Yeah.
So, Raymond, so thank you for sharing that.
And thank you. Right, this is the rotary 4-way test, right?
Yes.
The one that you see on the signs on the road.
Yes.
So,
if you were to look.
so what's another way that would help you give feedback? Listen to the person. Read the signs, people. Don't just let the signs go by. Read the signs.
Yeah. Especially in the old world, when we'd get stuck in traffic, we had time to read the signs.
Yep. And thank you. So Maria Rita again shared this challenge for the feedback giver to be proactive as the other person rejects it.
That's true.
And that's
true.
exactly what Sid, you just gave a perfect example to this. Right. And yet, what's the value for us to still be proactive? Or maybe sometimes it's an assumption. Sid, do you get this sometimes when you coach your managers or your people? They have this story about, I want to give this person feedback, pero magagalit na yan eh, pero di niya gusto eh. But he hasn't even said anything yet to the person.
Yeah, you need to go back to the intent, diba?
Yes.
Why are you doing this? What value are you trying to create? And one of the things that I learned as a manager and as a leader is that we help people succeed. And even as parents, we help our kids succeed in life, and then the same thing with our friends. So if you know that they're going to make a mistake, what are you going to do? Allow them, right? So you have to be concerned. So every one of us are parents, to each other, even to our subordinates, even to our colleagues. That's called accountability. You tell them, hey, what you're doing is wrong. We're all going to fail. You're going to fail. Do you want that? No, we have to be concerned. So you have to think about what's the consequence if you allow it to happen. So you have to do everything you can. Personally, I have to do everything I can to help that person realize this is very important for you. Now, what if it's not important for him? Then there's another conversation. That means you have two different desired results, right?
Right.
So then maybe you shouldn't have that conversation at all. Yeah. There.
Nice. Thank you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Let's see what's the next one. Okay. Okay, so this is a situationer, Sidney. Kasi ganito daw yung kausap. Okay? And the person says, ganito talaga ako, take it or leave it. How to deal with people with this mentality, right? Do we accept this mentality? When can we say, sige, pwede na, or sumusobra na siguro to?
That's
ganito ako eh. Diba? Ganito ako eh. Take it or...
diba? What's the definition of trustworthiness? Character and competence, diba?
Yes, character and competence. You're right.
So someone who speaks like this shows you a little bit about the character already. It's hard to discipline that. I mean, it's hard to change that. So that to me, as a manager, for example, so this is the consequence for this if you do this one. That means to say you want to fail. You want to fail. Now, you see, yung ganito talaga ako, you have to define what are knowledge and skills and what are patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Knowledge and skills can be taught, and that's easy. That's the easiest thing to do. Yung patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, they are either at the balcony, meaning you're mature, or nasa basement, meaning to say, talagang raw pa. Pero alam mo, like for example, a competition person, we always try to fight others, right?
Yeah.
Pero the mature competition person will fight a different fight. He will always want to win,
Yeah.
but will be at a different level that is not offensive to others naman, no? Of course, you're gonna get hurt because you're going to lose to the competitive person, but it will be in a mature way. Someone who's speaking like this is a little bit immature. So as a manager or even as a parent, you have to let them grow in terms of character, because that's I think we have to be stern. We have to be stern with them, right?
In fact, ang take ko sa question na to, in my experience and with what I've heard of coaching teams and managers, part of the ganito talaga ako, take it or leave it, is its close cousin na sino mag-a-adjust. Which is what parang the second, right? Do I accept this mentality? Do I adjust and sige pwede pa? Or do I not budge and parang sumusobra na to, di ba? And I share with managers and leaders that that's a trap to think na sino mag-a-adjust. Because if we're talking about a shared result, the actions also have to be shared. So tell them, bottom line, pareho kayo mag-a-adjust. Ang tanong kung anong kailangan adjustment ang kailangan gawin at kung ano ba yung gusto ninyong makuha. Right? Because then, right, there's a context behind this. And this is something I want to share with everyone, right? And going back to Sidney's point, right, you have to name the context, be clear with the situation or the problem where this is being said, because this can be said to something deep, and it can be something that's really stopping the person from success that maybe the person wants to improve on. Pwede, di ba? Na I want to be more friendly, I want to be more outgoing, pero shy ako, ganito talaga ako eh. Di ba? Take it or leave it. Or this could be used as an excuse.
Right.
Di ba? I don't have Sidney, I don't have the skills, knowledge, hindi ako ganun mag-isip, hindi ako nakapag-aral sa ganito, wala akong experience sa ganito, hindi ako galing sa ganyan. Di ba? And that's used as an excuse.
Right? But you see, you need to note how you said it compared to take it or leave it.
Yes.
Take it or leave it has a certain connotation, no? That doesn't show respect also, no?
That's true.
It shows defiance.
May interview tong nakapila. to say something like this.
Kung empleyado siya.
Nakapagpasa na yan na CV, nakapag-update yan.
I think if I may jump into the conversation on this here, I like what Sidney mentioned about yung character and competence. And I think it actually relates also to what you said earlier about knowledge and skill, where competence really is primarily that's your knowledge and skill. What are you capable of? What do you bring to the table? And then your patterns of thinking, behaving, they might speak a little bit more about your character. But I also like how you mentioned, Sidney, that there is as we call it in the strengths framework, there's the basement and then there's the balcony being the more mature. And I think it depends on, I guess, as you put it, Lippy, the context of where this comes out. But I'd say that it's also worth pointing out ano yung consequences, as you both have pointed out in the previous questions. Like, for example, kunyari sinabi ng tao to sa'yo, then maybe I'd say, okay, if that's, depending on the situation and how urgent it is, so to speak, then maybe one route would be to say, okay, if this is you and this is how you say you insist on behaving or insist on being, then these are the consequences of your behavior, of your actions. Or if you're a bit more patient, then maybe it's worth asking the question, how do you think this will result? I'll relate it again to my experience of being a father. So as they say, yung mga kids, the age of my kids or our kids, they're 4 and 2. They say at that age, it's really about themselves. It's a selfish framework, so to speak, initially, and that's just natural. But what they say also is if you want them to learn to socialize and be with other people, you have to give them enough leeway to understand what are the consequences. So if they push their playmate, yes, the tendency is nakahiya sa ibang magulang, so pipigilan mo. But then if you never allow them to do something, like push their sibling, push their playmate, then they will never realize that no one will want to play with them. Kasi yun yung consequence, di ba? Or kung tayo as grown-ups, or as adults, if we scream and fight with everyone that we relate with, eventually, no one will want to play with us, figuratively or literally. whether on the basketball court, the football pitch, or in the boardroom. Eventually, it's going to be, you may be CEO, but you'll be very lonely at the top. No one will want to have lunch with you.
For
No
the
one
for the wrong reasons.
Yes, diba? Even if you say I have an open door, even if you tear your door down, no one's going to approach you if you scream and shout at everyone. So those are the consequences. And I think part of the maybe the learning curve and maybe the where they will have to make their own decisions will be when they recognize that those are the consequences. If you're forever going to say in life, ganito talaga ako, take it or leave it, it's likely that, to my mind, of course, I'm making quite a number of assumptions here, but it's likely that most people will say, okay, I'll leave it. It's just a question of when that's going to happen. Are they going to leave immediately, or are they going to stick with you for a while and then say, you know what, I'm fed up. I have nothing more to give to you, and just walk away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what if Pao ang sinabi sa'yo, ganito talaga ako trustworthy and loving, take it or leave it.
Well, then I guess it goes back to then asking them, how loved do you think the people around you feel? Or how much do you think the people around you trust you? And maybe leave it and let it sit for a moment without judging. Because if I say, tingin mo ganyan ka, then obviously it's a judgment on my end. And they're not gonna take that.
and Sid, we're sharing because we also have a comment here from Maria Rita again. So she's saying it's important to maybe inform the team up front, like what are, and this is something we do, right? What are your natural talents, strengths, what are you good at, so that people know, or what are the different approaches, what's natural for you. Like, for example, I usually tell the teams that I work with that it's natural for me to always look at the loopholes and the holes and what needs to be fixed. So don't take that negatively, and we're understanding each other on what you're saying, Sidney, yung how patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I share something?
Yes,
sabi nga nila, one of our biggest fears is public speaking, and that's because we don't want people to see us for who we really are, or else we might, we might not be accepted, right?
Right.
Kaya napakahalaga in team effectiveness to show, to be able to be accepted for who we really are. And I guess in the book of Patrick Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of a leader, yung
Right.
the trust, the foundational one is trust. It's not about trust means being able to accept people, both from their areas of strengths and from their areas of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
No, so napakahalaga no. I think and to put this comment more in a positive note, no. Parang I think there's this hunger for or need for to be accepted, no. And can you do that? So kaya napakahalaga for managers, for parents, to be able to make an effort to listen, no, to understand, no, to see, and maybe from there the magic happens. Meaning, he'll try to change, no, or he'll try to be more respectful, or I'll try the new ways, no.
May follow-up question doon, Sid. Do you have a follow-up question to that one? No? Pinatatanong, paano daw kung matanda na yung kausap mo dito, hindi bata? May room to grow pa daw kaya, tapos di mo maalisan yung situation.
I have a good example for that.
I have
a very good example for that. Okay, 22, 23 years ago, I talked to this, 50, 60-year-old guy who has 3 sons and a daughter, and he's an assistant vice president in one of the local banks, and he didn't have any good relationships with the sons, and the sons hated him actually. So, but what he did was he was studying the 7 habits, and I was kind of awed by it. No? Sabi ko, he's studying, no? He's studying the 7 habits, and he truly wanted to learn. So to me, I thought that was an opportunity to coach him and help mend the relationships, no. And you know what? He he was it turned around things, no? The relationships got better. What's the point? The point is there has to be openness on the side of
Mhm.
the man or any person, no, to go through that change. Because if not, then wala eh. Pero at least there has to be persons around who can influence it.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
I think if I may jump in, I like that you shared that, Sydney. And I think one of the things I took away from there is you said there needs to be openness. While I was taking notes when you were speaking, I wrote the word desire. So I think there needs to be a desire from the end of the person to grow or to develop. And I think one of the things that we sometimes ask, whether it's managers, bosses, even partners, people giving feedback even, sometimes miss is to go back again to your earlier point on being clear about the intent. I think it's worth asking the question, is the intent really for the good of this person or the betterment of everyone? Or sometimes what we, I think, tend to do is we want them to be more like us. What we think to be correct, what we think to be the way of doing things. And I think if they feel that way, it becomes very difficult because it's almost as if we're forcing them to let go of themselves and not allowing them to be themselves. Recently, I was reading the book of Brené Brown, Gifts of Imperfection, and there she distinguishes between belonging and fitting in, and she very clearly says that, to your point, belonging is about being able to, I guess, in a way, feel secure being yourself, while fitting in is being forced to fit this mold and basically being told, ganito yung mga tao dito. How well do you think can you fit in? And I think when people begin to feel that there's this mold that we're forcing them into, then I think human nature, maybe your fight or flight, maybe your self-preservation, simply says, sorry, ganito ako. Never mind, take it or leave it. But if there's a clearer mutual benefit at the end of the tunnel, then I think there will be a bit more openness. Not to say na walang resistance. Of course there will be. But any change, I think, will meet resistance. But if there's a clarity of that end goal, then I think it will be easier.
Right. We have time. So our
Pwede ba last?
our production team has given us time for one more. So we'll have our last question or comment. Okay.
Dahil openness ang topic.
Oh, Sid, maganda to, Sid. So what's the best way to get out of your comfort zone? You have to, you can, but maybe you don't want to hurt people or hurt yourself or hurt myself. Kasi getting out of my comfort zone might involve people getting hurt, not intentionally though.
Okay. Sid, do you have anything you'd like to start with?
Well, getting hurt happens, no? So it's a natural way of growing, whether physically, emotionally. Yeah. But I think but doing it intentionally is another thing. No? So it's really like that. When we want to grow, we have to get out of our comfort zone and get to the next level. It's always hard, no? Especially when we want to transform. The transformation itself, the ego, letting go of our ego, that's difficult, no?
Right.
I mean, a lot of people don't want to let go of their ego, no? Letting go of our old self is that's very painful. But I know how painful that is. Kaya napakalaga ng friends, ng support, ng family to help you go through it. When you're changing, the dynamics change also around you. So some people also get hurt, no? But others like the idea of you changing for the better. So sa loob ng family, for example, you wanna from treating kids from toddlers to becoming, young adults, for example, there has to be a change in the way you converse. Yeah,
Right.
Diba?
Right.
So that's painful. When in the office, when your friends and then all of a sudden your colleagues, and then you're the boss,
Yeah.
because you need to be the leader. You have to be stern at the same time, kind, no? But that hurts too. You need to be strategic. That hurts too, kasi now people get upset because of the intellectual conversations that you go through and the challenges that you have to force people to go through. No, you stretch the time and the resource that they're using so that you can achieve bigger exponential results. You're creating pain, but be mindful that you're also creating a better future. And I think that's why it's very important that the desired results, the intent, and the value that you're trying to create are clear. No? And the support that you need to do to create in terms of the doctor crap or win agreements are also very clear. No?
I think, Lippy, is there anything you'd like to add?
The impact of Sid of your sharing on me is that if I relate it to the question, that there's no one best way to get out of your comfort zone. In fact, the energy I'm getting from what you shared, Sidney, apart from knowing what you need to know, the structures, you gotta name it, your desired result, it's start any way you can to get out of comfort zone or to try something new. Like start no matter how small, because eventually that snowballs into bigger and bigger change. And that's something that has worked for me and my coaches sometimes to think about, right? How change is more like especially change in your life or personal habits, right? Or ways of thinking. That change is more like a snowball rolling down a hill rather than trying to break a tree or like a thunderbolt. It doesn't happen all at once, but once it gets enough momentum, it just keeps going and going and going.
True. If I may add also, in just going back to the question, how do you what is the best way to get out of your comfort zone? When I was listening to you read this question, Lippy, the image I had in my head was one of a roller coaster ride. And I think most of us have that experience where when the roller coaster is going up and we have this tuck, 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 aside from the professional thrill seekers, so to speak, I think there are many of us who play this story in our heads of, why on earth am I here again? Why am I not down there? And why did I let this person beside me drag me into this roller coaster? But and yet the reality, I think, is for many people I know, and I admittedly myself, after the ride, there is that small voice at the back of our heads that actually secretly says, let's do it again. I don't want to get out of this. I don't want to get out of this seat. And I think, just to relate it to the question, I think the way I'd bring it back to the question is, if we could treat getting out of our comfort zones the same way, understand that there will be discomfort. There will be those moments where we say, why am I here again? Why am I even trying this again? And there will be thrills. Yes, there will be mistakes, as many gurus and experts like saying. Even Simon Sinek says, if you want to innovate, if you want to learn new things, if you want to improve, accept that there will be mistakes. Accept that you will not get things right. But I think one of the things for me that at least has worked is when you aim to get out of your comfort zone, don't go for moonshots every single time. Yes, there are times where moonshots will work, but if I think if what you do is aim to do just a little bit beyond what you feel is realistic right now, then it makes it attainable and it gives you the sense that kaya to, versus, let's say, you aiming for the moon and you feel like you're only here right now, you might start out feeling overwhelmed and not even get that motor running. On the other hand, if this is your curve, so to speak, and you sort of aim for here, just above that curve, and it ticks up a little bit, and whether you hit it or not, you get the thrill of a small win, you get the thrill of taking one step higher than you're used to, then I think it allows you, or at least this is what it's allowed me, it allows you to feel that kaya naman pala eh. There are thrills, there are wins to be taken along the way. Going back to what Sidney mentioned about public speaking. Whenever I say this, when I facilitate, when I speak, whenever I tell people I'm an introvert, and I was terribly shy when I was much younger. Many of them just shake their heads and laugh, and pretty much a BS. But it started by me giving it a shot and saying, I was really scared the first time I spoke in front of my class, but then I realized I enjoyed it. And I still get nervous when I speak in front of an audience nowadays. But what gets me going is the understanding that at the end of the day, I will tell myself, you know what, I enjoy it. I get a thrill out of it. I get fulfillment out of it. I enjoy seeing that I'm able to connect with people. So it's a specific example from my life. But to me, I think that's my story of getting out of my comfort zone. Because my comfort zone would have been sitting at the back of the classroom and never raising my hand, never saying, I want to speak. But of course, if I did that, I wouldn't be here on screen with you guys, and I wouldn't be enjoying this right now. So,
Sidney would not have heard of you being the honor student.
maybe still the honor student, because honor students can sit at the back of the classroom.
I'm wrong. I stand corrected.
But in this process of getting out of your comfort zone, you need to understand why you're getting out of the comfort zone.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah. So it has to be clear. The picture has to be clear of what you're trying to achieve. In this case, what's your Mount Everest? No. So do you really want that? No. Because if you do, then go for the win-win and get the support that you need. If not,
That's
then
true.
no, you stay where you are. Maybe you're happy where you are, right? So be clear about that. No? In fact, in habit 2 and habit 3, that's being taught. No? Yung beginning with the end in mind. And then yung first things first. Kasi those are first things first. You taught about what's your governing value, then what does it look like in terms of goals, di ba? And then you plan and act. No? Pero more importantly, it's the habit 7. Yung habit 7 kasi, it gives you the strength to get through the struggle.
Yes.
Yeah, kasi yung burning the fire within. So ibig sabihin, you need to take care of for example, physical. You have to do your exercise because it makes you stronger. Not just physically, but also your grit, your determination to get through tougher things in life. It helps you there. The spiritual, your faith makes you stronger too, because you know that somebody else up there is going to help you. No, and there's an invisible hand that will always help you. No, and of course your mental health. No, I mean your mental acumen. You have to make sure that you have the right tools in terms of knowledge and skills to get there.
Right. I think if I may share one more thing. Just a few days ago, I did a session on trust, and I mentioned how trusting really is all about looking at and seeing the possibilities in other people rather than focusing on the might nots or the possible disappointments. And I think this question, of going out of one's comfort zone goes back to perhaps trusting ourselves. And again, reframing it so that, yes, there is that possibility, there is that potential for failure. And I think for many of us, maybe the fear is coming from having failed or having been hurt in the past. But I think if we reframe and we look at, okay, yes, I might fail, but what are the possibilities? What if I don't? What if I do it right? What if I manage to get it right? Or what if someone helps me get it right this time? And I think one of the things we'll realize is that the possibilities very often will far outweigh the possible disappointments, the possible fears or consequences. Just to go back to the last point in the question, it might involve people getting hurt, not intentionally though. And I think, yes, there is that possibility that people will get hurt, that they'll be disappointed. But I think if they know what we're trying to do, if at least the people who are important to us, the ones that matter most in our lives, if they understand what we're trying to do, I think that they will support us far more than they're likely to bring us down or wait for that disappointment and focus on that hurt.
Pao,
Yes.
paano kung wala ka namang end in mind? Feeling mo lang it might be better.
Well, then maybe the question would be, what made you think about the possibility in the first place? That might be better. Maybe that would bring you to an end in mind. Baka hindi lang malinaw yung end in mind. But if you ask the question, okay, bakit ko siya naisip in the first place?
But why are you wanting to get out of your comfort zone anyway, right?
Yeah.
Why is it important to you, right?
Yes. Yeah. And maybe it's, sometimes I think how do you call it? I think the challenge or the difficulty of Sidney has brought up the habit 2, or begin with the end in mind in the mission statement a number of times. I think sometimes the difficulty of habit 2 is it feels so big. Parang ang bigat niyan dali na wow, gagawa ko ng mission. I'm gonna make my mission statement today.
This is my life. Parang
yes.
Ganun, di ba?
And it becomes scary, I think, if you really take it to heart, di ba? But I think if we think about it in smaller chunks, like I like the exercises we do where we think about what do we want people to say about us? What are our strengths? What are the things that have inspired us in the past? What are the biggest contributions we think we've made? Then I think it makes it a bit more manageable. And then it makes it also a lot less scary to go for those little changes that will bring us growth, I think.
Nice. And with that, now is the point in our conversation where we will tie everything together. And so Sid, we usually we end. So Sid, if we were to ask you, what's connecting all the topics that we talked about?
To me, it's really personal mastery.
So habits 1 to 3, which I think Sidney actually opened by talking about, no? Personal mastery.
Yeah.
How about you, Lippy?
Exactly. For me, tying all of this together, well, apart from personal mastery, it's also authenticity for me. Getting real with what it is, what's my win, what it is that I want, what's my intention here, and getting clear on that. Because a lot of the topics we talk about, you'd have a hard time, you'd flub it if you didn't know why you were trying to do it in the first place.
That's true.
But having that clarity and knowing what your win is, even the clarity of knowing what you want to fight for yourself and what you stand for, makes a huge difference to getting a good outcome in the different questions and situations that we were shared with today.
Yeah. And for me, if I may share, I think Lippy, you touched on it already. You introduced it very well. I think what ties it all together is, and I'm going to take from a lot of what Sidney shared here, it's really clarity around where we want to go and what we want to get. Part of me saying, let's not necessarily to say objectives because it sounds so formal, it sounds so corporate, because a lot of this applies both professionally and personally. So, at the end of the day, however you want to put it, I think it's really about a clarity around what is the end in mind, what's the objective, what do you want to get out of it, what's the win, whatever articulation makes sense to you. But it's really about clarity of where we're going and what we want to get out of the whole experience. And I think if we stay true to that, it'll help in all of these admittedly very challenging situations, I think.
Yeah. And at this point, Sid, if we were to ask you what piece of advice or learning that you want our viewers and our people who be watching this video to take to heart, what would it be?
Well, I think what struck me the most was the journey from one level to the other and how to manage feedback or difficult conversations between two differing views or two different perspectives. And I think my advice for you is to as mentioned by Paul, to build the desire to understand, to build the desire to be aware of what's really happening around you. Because the answers will come in, but you have to know what's really happening. Well, so I think that's called being mindful. No? Being mindful about what's happening to you. Because the pains will tell you, this could be, these are the things that I need to address. No? But you need to know that. No? And before you address the pains, are they important? I mean, that's
true. That's true.
The person you're dealing with important. Because if not, don't spend time there. You have other important things to do.
Right. You have other big rocks, no, Sid?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Well said, well said. And thanks, Sidney. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be
Absolutely, yeah.
here and share your wisdom bombs with everyone. I enjoyed this session thoroughly.
Oh, so did I.
Right? And yeah, thank you so much for being and for everyone here with us today. Thank you so much for the participation and for the questions, for being here with us and having a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as we always say, we invited Sidney to come over. And yes, he's always been part of the family, so to speak.
Yeah.
He was there more or less when all of this started in the Philippines. And while he's sort of moved on to bigger, greater, maybe other things in his life, we do fully appreciate how Sidney has always been there, either as a client or even now, for example, as a partner here in this conversation. And I think for me, as Lippy said, I enjoyed this immensely. I hope it has been meaningful for all of you who are with us today. I hope Sydney enjoyed this. I hope it was worth
Oh,
your
yeah.
time.
Would you come back again if we invited you next time?
Sure, my pleasure.
And so, as you see, this is a shared journey. As we said, conversations as a platform, as an approach. Lippy and I, even Sydney, we had no idea what was going to come up. But we share what we have. We share the insights. We share our experiences. As you probably have seen, while we build on each other's thoughts and insights, we don't necessarily have the same answers. We definitely don't have the same experiences. And what we invite you to do is come into the conversation with us, whether on camera or in the chat. Share with us your thoughts, your insights, your challenges. There are really no right or wrong answers. There are only possibilities that we can look for here together. So I think on behalf of Sidney and Lippy, I thank all of you for joining us here. Again, here, your coaches, facilitators, your partners in learning. Myself, Paolo, Lippy, Sidney for this afternoon. And again, Sidney, thank you very much for joining us in this afternoon's session. We hope this has been meaningful for everyone. Again, at the Center for Leadership and Change and at Franklin Covey. And I hope I'm speaking for Sidney here, being a great believer in what we do. Really, what we aim to do in all of these things, whatever we do, whether you're with us on Facebook Live, on conversations, in one of our workshops, or even in daily conversations, we aim to enable greatness and help you achieve what is most important to you. As Sidney pointed out earlier, what are those big rocks? What is truly important to you? And hopefully
And
this session has given you... Yes, Lippy.
And if any one of you, maybe some of you are interested in undergoing the program and learning more about the habits and the practices that we've shared today, so you can just feel free to message us, email us here, or send a message on the page to inquire about the program. So we do teach it. It's a 3-day live event, but now, if I recall correctly, it's 5 days online. Am I right, Pao? Yeah, that's where we
5 half days.
5 half days, right? And that where we teach what the 7 habits are and what the different framework structures and practices for you to be able to fully live that out.
So if perhaps you feel like being as inspired and as perhaps lifelong impacted as Sidney has shared he has been, then let us know. Otherwise, we do hope that this afternoon session has been meaningful for you. It definitely has been an enjoyable experience and one that we'd like to do again on our end. So on behalf of Lippy and Sidney and our production team, Amanda and Javik and the rest of the Center for Leadership and Change, thank you for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you will have more conversations with us again in the future. See you, everyone.
See you.
And
Thank
have
you,
a great
guys.
week ahead. Stay safe.
Thank you.